Welcome to FM Corner. I'm Danny Kinch, your host, Director of Relationship Management for Windy City Equipment. With me today is Beau Massey. Beau is the president of Collier Restaurant Group. Beau, thanks so much for taking the time today to speak with me.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
You bet. Beau run a group of restaurants, both up in by the Smoky Mountains here in East Tennessee and also in Myrtle Beach. And it consists of about 10 different concepts plus campground, right?
Yeah. And then also a billboard side also.
There you go.
Another aspect. So
there you go. So a lot. So we're going to talk kind of today about Collier, about Beau's career, management, leadership styles, and so on. It should be a great listen. Let's get started, Beau. Kind of talk about your career. How'd you get from where you started to today being the president of a company?
I guess by luck. We've talked about it before. A lot of people end up doing what they didn't start out to do in the first place, and I've got that same story. I always thought I'd end up being a professional baseball player, getting to play a sport, and it went down that road for a long time. I played at the University of Tennessee, and then played minor league ball for a few years, and unfortunately that didn't pan out. And luckily, I had a degree, so I was able to get out and do some other things. But I learned quickly sales was not going to be kind of a strong suit for me. I'm not a very pushy person. I like people. I like helping people. So I got into kind of that financial world for a little while, and found that wasn't going to be something I enjoyed doing. And then not long after that, I had a friend say, "Hey, you ought to try this." And so I ended up being a hearing instrument specialist for a little bit, which is not a doctor, by the way. It's just basically you get state certifications, and I had a strong background in biology. So it was an easy certification for me to get. And I found that I really liked that. And it was actually classified as sales also, but it was totally different, where people actually had a need. They came to you. You didn't have to solicit them. And so I ended up managing 3 different locations of these hearing aid centers. And I really enjoyed that. People came in, and my job was to, kind of diagnose their hearing and see what they needed. And then we'd work together to find a solution for them that they could afford. I didn't have to be pushy. And I was like, this is the life. Like, all I'm doing is helping people. It felt purposeful. And so I did that for a couple of years. And then my father-in-law, who was the founder of this restaurant company, of Collier Restaurant Group, and he had what was, I think, his 3rd heart attack, which was a pretty significant one. Spent some time in the hospital, and one day he called me on the phone, told me to come in and talk to him. So I went kind of late at night after visiting hours. He never did anything by the rules, so I had to go in a little late and con him into letting me back. And he talked to me about joining the business. He said, "I've got 2 daughters, and neither of them are really interested in the financial side. My wife she works wonders on the PR side and marketing. I mean, she's a people person. But he said, this is a family business, and it's a lot of operations. And I need somebody in here that I can trust to do it when I'm gone." And so I didn't really give him an answer at that point, because my wife and I had talked about that I never really wanted to be in the family business. I grew up with that. My parents were in business together, and unfortunately their business didn't always do so well. So I had to hear about it growing up every day, how they were in financial trouble, and they needed to pivot and do things. I mean, it was both good and bad. I learned the bad side of it there, and I'm learning the good side of it now. But ultimately, my wife and I thought it'd be a good idea for me to come in. And so I told him yes. And then he had a plan, which was for me to come in and just work directly under him and kind of learn it from the ownership perspective and what to look for and how to run things from a high level. And that didn't really work for me. I told him, I've never even been in a kitchen of a restaurant, Brent, and I'm supposed to make decisions that are going to affect a lot of people.
Sure.
So I need to get out there and learn what they're going through. And so for a couple of years, just under 2 years, that's what I did. I went out, and the first thing I did is I was a busser and a disher at a pancake house, and kind of learned that and worked my way up to cook. And at that point, not many people knew who I was. I was just kind of figuring things out. And it wasn't, everybody says it's like undercover boss, but it really wasn't, because I didn't know anything about it. So I'm just learning the same as anybody else. And I learned real quick. And by the end of it, I managed almost every brand we got, and got to a management level, went through all the Golden Corral training, a lot of the TGI Friday training, melting pot training. I mean, I went through a lot of it, and found that if this was a long time decision where I had to work in the restaurants, it wasn't going to be the best life for me. I think it takes a special person to get up and do that every day, to interact with the customer, interact with your coworkers every day. And I think you're almost born into having that kind of mindset. And for me, I could have done it, because I'm kind of an ornery person that doesn't give up very easily, but it wouldn't have been a great life. But then at some point I started thinking about it, and I was like, man, why would I want to do this? And I started realizing, at some point, it's not about the food or the restaurant. I mean, those are very important, but it's about the people. And I got to thinking about the influence we're going to be able to have, and the positive impacts we can make on the people. And those people are special, and I got to love them and know them, and that's what it became about for me. My purpose became for them. So that's how I landed here. So.
It's funny when you speak to that. I think most people, and many people I've talked to, including myself, what I wanted to do and what I ended up doing as a career were night and day. You spoke about baseball, and I wasn't that good. I didn't get to do that, but I played baseball, and all of a sudden it's like, I can't hit anymore, so I'll go play softball because I can hit. Everybody can do that. I'll figure that out. But it's not, you end up doing something maybe that you never thought would be your career. I never thought I'd be in facilities. I'm the last person in the world to think about that, and spent majority of my career doing it. And you said the same thing. But one of the other points you made is you went out there and learned the business from the other side. And I think whether you do that by being in the stores, making the food, managing, bussing tables, whatever, or you make it a point to go to the locations, talk to people, learn from them, is critically important, because it gains respect, and it gives you the opportunity to then ask the questions or show them people ways, and they'll accept that because they've watched you go through the same process as they did.
Yeah. And something else I didn't think about how it correlates is, being a baseball player my whole life, I kind of became, I wasn't always the team captain, but I was always kind of known as the glue for a team. I had I was always kind of the funny person that could turn a bad situation into a good one when you're running, and it's just hard, just coming up with things to make people laugh and say, hey, it'll be over soon enough. Let's just get through it. And so that team aspect of playing baseball, I found that was very valuable out in the stores, and even more so valuable once you get in here to the office and you're kind of over everything. Everything's about working as a team, and everybody has a role, making sure that people know their roles and fill those roles. And so I felt like that was definitely something that I could bring to this organization, is that, really being the glue of the team, no matter what team it was. And now it's the whole team for me. So And I feel like that's something that definitely translated from my life experience of an athlete, and that's been great. So.
I think it kind of helps. It's like calming the storm, when something's not going right, whether that's in baseball or whatever it may be, and you have someone that kind of breaks the ice, kind of helps release that pressure and very calm. I know at Ruby Tuesday, working with hurricanes and restaurants closing and so on, you have to be the voice of calmness and really, like, or something funny like, boy, this is fun. And everybody looks at you like you've lost your mind, but it's like, you got to deal with it, and how you can go about that and helping to calm people down and show your presence during that time is critically important.
Very
Talk
true.
a bit about, Beau, what's the best and the worst thing of being in the hospitality industry?
Well, I mean, definitely the best thing I kind of talked about earlier. For me, it's it's the number of opportunities you have every day to make a positive impact in somebody's life. So it's the people that you get to work with, or the people you get to serve. I think the biggest thing is the customer changes. For the server, for the hostess, their customer is the actual customer. And for the cook in the kitchen, their customer becomes the server. You've got to do, put a good plate of food out so that server doesn't get yelled at when they take it to the table. And the dishwasher, he's serving the kitchen, the line, the cook's line, because if they don't have dishes, they don't have plates to put food on. So, and then as you get into the management role or beyond, where we are here in the office, I mean, our customers are the people that work for us. And that can be the accountant down the hall that is settling books every day, or that can be all the way to the manager or to the cook or to the server. I mean, they're all a part of our team. And so being able to make decisions that positively impact their life, I mean, that's why we do what we do.
Sure.
And for me, that's what it's all about. So that's by far the best thing. And then when you talk about the worst thing, sometimes that can also be the people. You just never know, and especially in our industry, there's some characters. So you may read them wrong, you hire the wrong person, and it affects the whole team. But I would never say that people are the worst thing. For me, the worst thing is the competitive landscape and competitive nature of the restaurant business and the small profit margins. I know this because we also have a campground, and we can utilize dynamic pricing, based on how busy we are. And if we're busy, we can let dynamic pricing kick in, and it raises the rates of the campsites or the campers or the rentals, and we make more money just based on, I didn't do anything any different to that property, but the demand is higher. So we make more money without doing anything. In a restaurant business, it's very price sensitive and very, it's competitive. I mean, if you raise a price of one menu item, it can change the way people order everything. I mean, they'll go away from that menu item just to keep, the ticket average down. And so you have to be really careful with those things. And unfortunately, it's not the same from the food vendor's perspective, because their prices go up and they just pass it along to us. So that's tricky, because the profit margins, they go up and down based on what you're paying for something, not necessarily what you're charging for something. I mean, because we always say there's a bell curve where you can increase the price so much, but at some point the guest count's going to go down. And when you tip that point of the curve, you've really messed up, because it's hard to go backwards and gain those customers back. So it's a very sensitive market. So for me, that's probably the worst thing. The other thing that's kind of different in our market is some of your lowest wage people are the face of your company. Your hostess, your servers, the people that that are interacting with your customer every day. I mean, your reputation as a company is built upon how they interact with a customer. So if you're not really taking care of those people and really training them and empowering them to make decisions and really just be a person instead of a robot, I mean, you can really mess up. So that can be tricky. I mean, it's a tough business. I think it's probably the toughest business out there. So, I mean, there's a lot of bad things, but I think if you just factor in the one best thing, the people, and the way the impact you can have on their lives, the impact they can have on the customer's life, I think that outweighs all of it.
Sure. Well, and you mentioned this one thing, and you talk about people. You hire enough people over time. There are people that work out great, that become stars in your company. There are other folks sometimes it doesn't work out, and it's maybe nothing more than it's just not a good fit. But you probably struggle with the same thing my company today does, and most every company out there is getting people, and getting people not only hired but to show up all the time and so on has become. I mean, it's an issue for everybody, and it's forced, like on the restaurant side, places to close earlier or change schedule just because literally they don't have enough people.
Very true.
Years ago, probably wasn't even talked about, but now it is, and so I'm sure you probably have the same difficulties in one, getting enough people and getting them to stay, so that you can produce for the customers.
Yeah, I mean, whether you get them or not, you've got to get them, and then you've got to get them to stay, or you don't have any productivity. So, I mean, that's huge in our business, but that's huge in every business, and we recognize that. So that's another reason we take so much pride in how we treat the people that work for us, and we have a pretty good track record of keeping people. And if they do leave, we typically get them back within 3 or 4 months because they see what else is out there, and they realize that a lot of people, it's just a job, and job for pay. And with us, we try to treat you like family. So, and you can't always say yes to what they want, but you can tell them why that you can't say yes. I mean, you always want to when it's something that'll benefit them, and that's. And that's tough for me to say no to somebody when they want something, and I see exactly how it's going to benefit them, and how it wouldn't be a bad thing for the company, but maybe we just don't have the money at the time, or we've got something on the horizon that's going to cost a lot of money. That's just business, and people tend to be way more understanding if you'll tell them the why than if you just say no. So that's definitely true.
One of the most critical parts of business is what you just said, is taking the time to explain the why. You don't win by saying, well, just because, or this is how it is, or people don't. That's not what they want to hear, is explain the why. I cannot, and here's the reasons why. And maybe down the road that no will turn into a yes, but for right now, if that's true.
Yeah.
But maybe, or no, and I don't see that changing, but here are the reasons why. And whether they are okay with the explanations you give them or not is not the point. You took the time to make sure you explained it, and so on, So
Yeah.
I just think that's critically important, and that's a part a lot of times in business you don't always see. Somebody just said, well, because. Well, because is, it's kind of like your kid. You tell them that and they'll go, how come? And, you got to keep going. You can't just say because that doesn't.
Yeah. I learned that the hard way. I grew up and my dad just said, because I said so, a lot. And so I learned real quick that that's not a good answer. So I try not to use that one with my own children, but I guess I learned a lot from that too, as far as, working in the professional world, but because I said so is not a very good answer. So
you're right. What kind of is your day made up of, Beau? What's your kind of responsibilities in a nutshell of being the president?
I think the biggest, there's several responsibilities here. I mean, it's the overall health and strength of the company is probably first and foremost, but how you get there is what I do. Live and communicate the core values and the mission of the company, and you got to show that they're not just words. You got to live them. I think creating and maintaining a people-focused culture is probably another big one. And a lot of these things aren't super measurable, but for me, it's a gut feeling. When I walk into a restaurant, I can feel whether there's tension in that restaurant or it's running smoothly. And then if I feel it's off, then I've got to investigate why. And then there's so many things, keeping the company in a position to pivot. I mean, in our landscape right now and economy, you've got to be able to stay agile as a company. Which is one of the reasons we have multiple, we have the campground, we have billboards, we have restaurants, but I've always got to keep us in a position to jump on the next opportunity when it presents itself. So, obviously evaluating the market and seeing if there's a need, evaluating our company to see if there's a need within our company that we're not providing for the people, or do we have a gap if we're behind on closing out month end, then we may need a new accountant or somebody on the settlement side. That's a big part of it. Sorry, my screen goes dark every now and then, so I have to touch it. I think, managing our partnerships, we've got a couple of business partnerships that I have to, communicate well with them and assess their needs. And then also our business partnerships with our vendors but contractual, anything we have contractual kind of runs through me. And then acquisitions, I'm constantly reading contracts, whether it's our lease terms and lining franchise agreements up with lease terms or reevaluating leases to see if they're favorable for the future. A lot of it has to do with that, but first and foremost, if my people aren't doing it, if our culture isn't what it's supposed to be, none of that other stuff's going to matter. We're not going to make it. So I'm constantly checking the pulse of both the corporate office here and the restaurants out there. That's probably the biggest thing. And obviously, we have operations meetings regularly, and we talk through operational issues, and so just. The day-to-day, when you're one president, part owner, it's all about the overall company. How it's doing, whatever needs to be done at that time. If you don't have somebody already doing it, you've got to step in and do it or be able to do it. And so that's basically my job. We've got a great crew here. We've got a really good operations team. We've got a good marketing team. So just making sure they're all working together. There's no silos. Everybody's communicating. That's a lot of the big stuff. So.
Well, and you mentioned immeasurables sometimes are hard to measure on certain items. You could take a situation where maybe you have a manager in a location and they're struggling really bad. And your role ends up being talking them off the cliff and, back into the fold and so on and so forth. That one piece could be the most important thing you did all week, because if you didn't do that successfully and they walk, you got a hole to fill. You could lose other team members because of their leaving. The restaurant may not run there's all kinds of other pieces that suddenly come into play. So it's hard to measure, but spending time and saving, for lack of a better word, that one person who's really struggling could have a huge impact on the whole company.
Yeah, and it often does.
Sure.
That's why it's and I would say one of my other roles is our leadership team here, keeping them really cohesive and mission focused, and make sure they're practicing the core values as well. And like you said, if a manager leaves because I didn't handle a situation properly or because I didn't even step in and try, then that can affect our leadership team, because one of those people may be the ones that have to step in and fill that role for a little while until we get somebody hired and trained. And if I lose one of them, then it's a really big deal. So we are a family company. I don't have bench strength all throughout, a region. We're pretty localized to an area. We do have some stores in Myrtle Beach, but those have been challenging because we have more bench strength right here in East Tennessee. And I can kind of plug and play, because I'd say one of the biggest things is that we look for is that toxic performer. You can have somebody that might be one of your best performers, but he could be toxic to the entire team, and you could start losing a lot of team members just because of the actions of one person who's doing a really good job for you, but he doesn't work well with the team. So, and that can be a big problem too. So, I mean, constantly going out and finding those people and either coaching them through it, or sometimes you have to get rid of those people just so the team can thrive. So, and we've got 18 different teams, in the restaurants, and then an office team, and then you could sub level that down to a marketing team, accounting team, and HR team. So you can have a toxic performer in any of those, and we've had them, and that is one of the biggest things you have to watch out for.
I think you said something that rang really true with me a little earlier about the vibe of a restaurant when you go in it. And I was never on the operational side, in my career, but being on the facility side, there is something to walking into a building and getting a feel. And more often than not, you will know. I mean, you can it's very obvious. It's funny. One of the things I would always listen for was traveling with a director of restaurants at Ruby Tuesday. So they had 10 or 12. And when you walk through the front door with that director, the hostess at the front goes, "Man, we hadn't seen you in 2 months." And it's an innocent remark, or you've changed your hair, or whatever. But it was very clear, without anybody saying a word, that the director doesn't spend time in his restaurants or her restaurants. It's just your team's going to tell you. They call it the way it is, and just something simple like that. You could, or when did you all make this change in the dining room? Well, we did that 6 weeks ago. Oh, so you hadn't been there in 6 weeks. Okay. Yeah. I mean, it was just that, but that vibe you spoke about, it's not hard, whether it's an office or a restaurant, doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
You can tell something's off.
Takes about 5 minutes.
Yeah.
You can feel it.
Something absolutely is off. And then, like you said, you got to dig into it to try to figure out what that is. So.
Yeah. And usually if you just ask some questions, you can find that out really fast. I mean, you'll either have team members pointing it out, or you can just observe and you can find it real quick.